Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Lee Perry. I run the Save Split Oak Forest campaign, and I am a huge advocate for defending our safe ecological spaces, some endemic species that are found nowhere else in the world, and really championing local policy. But today we have my dear friend John Hallman, who is from Defending Rural Florida, who has an incredible background on state legislation and lobbying at the state and talking to legislators about some policies through the years that have hurt and helped our conservation efforts. And so this right now, this time that we're in, today is January 23rd, 2026. This is currently legislative session. And with legislative session, we have some really terrible bills that are moving. And so we want to kind of put this video together to discuss some of the bad legislation and then give folks an opportunity to ask questions. And then we're going to take this video and email it across the state so that people can be aware of what's going on. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to John to do introductions and ask John about himself and his background.
Okay, well, thank you, Lee, and thank you for this opportunity. And I appreciate everybody being on this town hall meeting. We're at a crisis point in Florida. It's very serious. We're really at a point that, I mean, every new development now just puts another nail in our coffin as our aquifers are being drained and our wetlands are being paved over, and we're having flooding problems like we've never had. Traffic gridlock and our public services are being strained, our electrical grids are being strained, and we're really at a point where the legislative leadership in Tallahassee seems hell bent on just more and more development, and they've got basically three goals that they're trying to achieve with these bad bills, and one is to remove local control. And more importantly than local control is the developers want the public to stop. So that's why you see so many bills that bypass the local governing board, because they can't have a public hearing and the people can't speak. And that's been the biggest fear of developers over the last few years, as people more and more are coming to these public hearings and letting their voices be heard, and the developers want to shut you up. So it's more about public input that they're trying to stop. So their second goal is to get developments approved, all developments approved, and they want to do it quickly. So you'll see these bills will shorten the time frame for developments. Now, it used to be, I think, typically, I mean, you look at 6 months would be the time frame that local governing boards could do their due diligence and have a public hearing. And now they're shortening it to 30 days and maybe 60 days at the most. So this is, extremely serious. And this year, the developers know there's an election coming and that a lot of people are outraged. And so this is why there's been a big push. There's been more preemption bills on local growth management this year than I've ever seen. I thought last year was bad, but they've really gone forward. So anyhow, I don't mean to ramble on. So that's where, years ago I became very concerned. I'm come from 7 generations of Florida cattle ranchers. I have a love for the land. I became more and more sad as the days went by to see all this development. And I said, this has got to stop. So that was the big motivator for me to get into this and try to stop the pavement of every inch of Florida.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if you wanted to talk a little bit about Defending Rural Florida and your mission, and then we can click through the slides. Just let me know when you want me to transition the slides over.
Okay, so I was actually last February, so about a year ago, talking with some people I know that were just as upset as I was, and they said, we need to establish something that can be a voice in the legislature to try to, stop it, or at least slow it down. And so we formed Defending Rural Florida to do that. And so, if you go to our website, defendingruralflorida.org, or you go to our Facebook page, Defending Rural Florida, we try to post as much information for people to know, try to keep you up to date on how the legislators are behaving and why they're behaving the way they are. And so, yeah, we just all of us in rural Florida really are passionate about taking this on. So that's why we started. Um, so yeah, so I think we can go ahead and go to the first. I'll go to the
Okay.
first slide.
Okay. It's up.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
see it?
Well, yeah. So, yeah. So, these are the basic four principles that define rural Florida. And I think, Lee and a lot of people uh, support, and that's that the bills have to defend local control and support the right of local governments to make land use and growth decisions, management decisions, and reflect the will and welfare of their residents, not the demands of state mandates or developer influence. Number two is to protect agricultural and rural lands and oppose policy and legislation that encourage or subsidize the conversion of productive agricultural land and rural open space into sprawling residential or commercial developments. And to promote responsible growth, support growth that pays for itself through proper planning, infrastructure concurrency, and respect for carrying capacity, ensuring that the taxpayers and existing residents are not burdened with the cost of unchecked expansion, which they are. So it's already happening. So, and then fourth would be to preserve water, natural resources. I would add wildlife areas, wildlife habitat. And so we advocate for the protection of our wetlands and our aquifer recharge areas and surface waters from development, pollution, over extraction, and as the DEP has announced that our aquifers are being drained daily and may not last much longer. So those are the four guiding principles that I use going forward. So we go to the next slide. And so I wanted to address why is people ask me all this, why is the state legislature granting local authority? And, what it is developers found it easier to convince their legislative allies in Tallahassee to pass these sweeping bills than facing developers that, like I said, they don't want to face the residents anymore because they're mad. So developers or have found that if they can influence a handful, basically your leadership in Tallahassee, um, and that way they can get things done and override. So that's why that's happening. The developers, they support the legislative leadership quite handsomely with contributions to their not just their campaigns but to their PACs, their political committees. So that is, the donors, they want something back. For their they don't donate because they really believe in a legislator. They want something. And then what's happened with all these state preemption bills that have been, some of them have been passing for years, is local governing boards have a fear of retaliation from Tallahassee. And it's become a defining feature of the bills over the last decade. And what they're now being threatened with is losing state funding or grants, being targeted by state agencies or political committees, and facing legislative backlash on other bills, local bills that they would like to see done. And so that so they are, excuse me, so they, and we see this retaliation already. So you had Blaise Ngolia now is the CFO, and he has his Doge style Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight, where he's going into all these counties and going through their budget and saying they're spending too much money. And the problem with that is, like, okay, that's fine if you want to see wasteful spending, but what you're doing is you're using it, you're weaponizing it, because what Blaze has been doing is going after counties that are restricting development, Manatee County, Orange County, and some others. So I'm curious as to why he picked those counties. And then we saw Manatee County trying to restrict development and got a letter from the Department of Commerce, which is under Governor DeSantis, and basically threatened them, said, if you proceed forward with this, you're in violation of SB 180 that we're going to talk about. And so, that it is real that they are being threatened all the time now. And of course, SB 180 really opened up the threats to local governing boards. So this is why this is what's going on. As you can see there, one former county commissioner in a newspaper article said, if you speak up, you get punished. Everybody knows it, so they stay quiet. And too many times counties commissioners are just afraid of lawsuits from retribution from the state agencies, and so that's why that's happening. That Lee, did somebody have a question?
We can save the questions for the
Till the
end.
end? Okay.
That way we can get through the presentation in one full swoop.
All right. All right. So to 180. Everybody remembers 180 from last year. Hold on. So everybody remembers SB 180, I'm sure, last year that passed. It was sponsored by Senator Nick DeSegli. And what his bill did, it had many parts of the bill. Some of it wasn't so bad, but he had two sections. He had section 18 and section 28 dealt with two different things, but all about hurricanes. And so one part was section 18, which talked about what would happen in future storms. And what it said in future storms, because what the other part deals with the three storms from last year. Well, let's talk about this one. For 1 year after a hurricane, a local government cannot make any changes to their comp plans, that are zoning laws and such. That is restrictive and burdensome. Of course, he didn't explain what that meant. It said, and expressly said, for either existing homes or new construction. So the developers, when that passed and the governor signed it, they immediately started filing lawsuits because I'm sorry, that was for the existing hurricanes that happened last year. So anyhow, so for 1 year in the future, any hurricanes that happen will have the same thing. It will only be for a year, but still would cause havoc. So the other part is the one that was dealing with the other section of the bill is the one that dealt with the three hurricanes last year, which is Debbie, Helene, and Milton, that hit many areas of Florida. And so what this part of the bill last year, 180, said that if a county or a city was listed in the federal disaster declaration, which every county, that they could not pass anything with zoning and comp plans and such. And they went retroactive back to August of 2024, all the way to October of 27, that they couldn't do anything restrictive. This is the part that is the one that I meant started developers, as soon as this passed and was signed, they started filing lawsuits saying that was restrictive and burdensome. And so many counties and cities are under lawsuits right now. So what happened was that a lot of us were outraged and let our legislators know we're outraged. And they, as I was in Tallahassee early on, oh, we heard everybody. No, we're going to do something. We're going to fix it. And so Nick DeSegli finally came out with his, we'll call it a fix-it bill, which is SB 840, that he claimed he was going to fix the problem. And so what he did was he only fixed part of the problem and he left the most onerous part in. So with the part about the 1 year, going into the future, if we ever have a hurricane, he did fix that to say that you can't do anything, basically saying that you can't do anything that would slow down somebody rebuilding their home that was damaged from a hurricane, which makes a little bit more sense. And so he did fix that part, but the part about the existing, the hurricanes that happened last summer, in 24, he left that in and still left it that, so these lawsuits can continue. Now, the only thing he did with that part was it's still retroactive to August of 24. And he did shorten the sunset on the bill to August of 26. So in August, this will sunset. But here's the problem. All the existing lawsuits out there will still go on and they can still sue all the way. I mean, anything that a county does did from August of 24 going forward to August of this year of 26, they can't do. They're, so, or they'll get sued. And so so these developers are excited about this bill because they didn't mind, they don't care about the future storms because they deal with what's happening. They just want to know they want to get developed as much as they can right now. And so they were just fine with this bill because Senator DeSegli left it in that they can continue, basically by statute can keep suing. And so that's why, we oppose this bill. I'd rather this bill not pass at all, even though part of it did help. Um, and if he doesn't change this, and this is a simple change, all he's got to do is add to the section on the hurricanes from 24 and the restrictions that he imposed on local counties is just to put the same language he did for future hurricanes, which means that the only thing the county can't do is, slow down or stop somebody being able to rebuild their home, either, if it was damaged or possibly the home was blown down. They can rebuild the home and not be slowed down in doing it. And again, that can make sense. So it's a simple change. We've, several of us have been saying this is all you got to do is to make this a good bill is change the language and dealing with the 3 hurricanes from 24. So we are, I know many groups, 1,000 Friends of Florida, it's all trying to say, look, you got this bill, and he's trying to act like, look, I did it, I fixed it. Well, you didn't fix it. Now, partial fix on the least onerous part and left the most onerous part in. So that's something that this is serious. I mean, if this passes in its existing language, then they're pretty much cementing that. And the developers can start filing more lawsuits for the next several months. And even after the expiration of the statute, which would be August of 26, all filed lawsuits and anything that was changed by a local governing board during that period can be sued. They can be sued about that and have it overturned. So, we're looking at things like the rural boundary line in Orange County can be gone. So yeah, this is a really bad, this is not good. This is not something, I know many people are saying, well, we want to thank him for at least trying. Well, I'm not thanking him. No, he made the developers happy with this. So anyhow, we're, keep you posted on this and we'll keep fighting to get better language put in. So I guess we're not taking questions. We could move on to the next one.
Yeah, I went ahead and moved on.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. And so we are which bill are we on now?
Blue ribbons, your favorite.
Oh, blue ribbons. Wow. Yeah, you want to talk about the worst bill. Um, so the blue ribbon is another one. So by the way, I mean, you'll probably see on the slides that most of these bills or all of these bills were filed on the Senate side by Senator Stan McClain. He is a state senator from the Marion County, Ocala area. So this bill, if it passed, would create a way for developers to get qualified as a blue ribbon project. And so the criteria for to be a blue ribbon project would be to have a minimum of 10,000 acres or more, which are contiguous. And then they threw this in. They said only 60% of the land can be, has to be left in reserve and supposedly conservation, and only 40% can be residential development. So oh, well, I mean, look, they're at least they're going to conserve. 60% of the land would be held in conservation. Well, not really. So when you read the bill, what it qualifies as being reserved is that it can be held in conservation through the Department of Ag's Rural and Family Lands Conservation, or it can be parks or recreational activities or utility sites. So you have solar farms, reservoir and lakes, and other uses that support such activities. So what that tells me is that they can take that 60% of the land that they said is supposed to be reserved. And what's recreational uses? Well, you can put tennis courts in and golf course, all kinds of recreational activities on this land. So that would require parking and buildings and more pavement, and then or solar farms and such. And here's the other thing about the bill. It says only a portion of the reserve area has to be adjacent to the developed area. So you might think under this, like, okay, so there'll be, well, let's say 10,000 acres, for example. So 4,000 will be set off for development, and then the other 6,000 acres will be adjacent and will be all conservation. Well, they said only a portion of the reserve area has to be adjacent. So otherwise, that means they could, potentially build golf courses through the developed area, put homes around the golf courses, and still count that as reserve. And so this, and and here's the other thing is that, again, they're trying to do this with as many bills as they can, is that once a developer agrees to all the criteria to be a blue ribbon project, it has to be it will be administratively approved without any further action by the local government or having a public hearing. So it goes straight to administrative approval, and it's pretty much automatically done. So the local governing board can't have a say, the public cannot have a say. And so, when you look at it, again, let's just say that the 60% of the land in the case of 10,000 acres, 6,000 acres, even if we change the bill to say, like, no, it has to be strictly conservation, maybe, have walking paths and such, but basically conservation, can't be any pavements of any kind or any buildings. You're still talking about in this case of 10,000 acres, 4,000 acres being developed. And what the Blue Ribbon Project allows, 12 units per acre, 12 units per acre. That's so what they're doing is what they would normally do if they could use all 10,000 acres for residential is they're going to squeeze them in. So what you're going to do is you're going to add, so you're going to have what, 4,000 acres at 12, it's 4,800 units, with the average home having at least, 3 people. And so you're going to be adding hundreds of thousands of people into an area, all with cars. So you're going to be adding. So I looked at the issue of the, as Lee knows, in Orlando County, with the Deseret Ranches has been trying to get their ranch property in the east part of Orlando for development. They've been trying and trying and trying. And so if this passes, they'll be able to do 52,000 acres, their proposal of development. But now, under this blue ribbon, they would have to, they could develop about 21,000 acres, and about 32,000 acres would be in reserve. Math's probably not correct there, but it's 20,800 developed and 31,200 in reserve. That would be at 12 units per developable acre, would be about 250,000 units, with the average of 2.5 people per home, and you'd add over 500,000 people to the population of Orange County, and add at least 500,000 more cars on the roads. So, again, this is a really bad bill. It's just a sneaky way. They thought, oh, listen, we're gonna tell people, like, 60% is going to be in conservation, so everybody will be happy, right? And of course, as I mentioned, the reserved area that's supposed to be in conservation can be a lot of things that would add buildings and pavements and buildings and everything. So they could dig lakes and have a yacht club. So this is a bad bill, and this is one that we're definitely going to fight through the session.
The next one is the agricultural enclaves.
Right. So last year there was, again, here we go with Senator McLean again. He had a bill last year. Lee knows about, remembers it, 1118, SB 1118. And basically, under current Florida statute, a piece of land can qualify as an agricultural enclave if basically if they're surrounded by three sides of residential development, right? But zoned ag, but all this development around it, at least three sides. But by statute, that is an agricultural enclave, and under current statute, a landowner could ask for a comp plan amendment to allow it to be zoned residential, but under current statute, the local governing board could deny it. They would have a public hearing. So last year he decided, like, well, we're going to say they qualify for an agricultural enclave, and it has to be, again, here we go, administrative approved and no further action from the public or from the local governing board. So this year he brought it back. And so he decided that, well, everybody really was mad about the local governing board and the public not having a say. So he basically has the same bill, but this bill would allow for a local governing board to deny it, have a public hearing. They could deny it. But immediately they put in the language in the bill that says, but if it's denied, they can take it to the court and they would have standing to have it overturned. So here we go again. So, it's using the courts to overturn thoughtful development plans. So this bill is still dangerous. And so this is another one we're going to fight because, again, it gives them developers an opportunity to take something to court, just like 180 did, and get their way and develop all these, we've got to be careful. I mean, we can't just, agricultural land, even though it's surrounded by development, there again, we're going to have thousands of acres developed, adding more homes and more cars and more strain on our electrical grids. Again, I'm let the local governments decide with public input. If they want to do that, then, all right. Then, they heard from the public and they did their due diligence and, they want to do it. I don't want it mandated from the state because, Stan McLean doesn't live in Orlando, let's say Orlando. He doesn't know what Orlando is going through, but the Orlando commissioners and the people do. And so they're the ones that should make decisions on any future land growth. That's where the decision should be made. And so the recurring theme here is quit from hundreds of miles away in a building in Tallahassee, you're telling us what we have to do in our county. And I just, like I said, if a county says, what, we're okay with this, then fine. I would hope that people of the county would reject it, but because it's still going to add more homes, more problems, more traffic gridlock and loss of water and just everything else. And our wetlands are getting paved over. So this one, is a bad bill.
Land and water management.
Yeah, so SB 718, again, here we go, Stan McLean and Representative Maggard on the House side. Basically what this bill would do if it passes, it would preempt water management from the counties and it would preempt it to the state. Doesn't really say what state agency, assuming Department of Environmental Protection, but doesn't matter. The state, a local county, it would block counties and municipalities from adopting or enforcing any local laws or policies related to water quality, water quantity, pollution control, pollutant discharge, or wetlands. And so, that just, here we go again. I mean, the local county has a better grasp of what's going on and how to protect our, some of our areas that are endangering our way of life, through and being able to do storm, with so many of these counties getting all this flood stormwater coming in and nowhere to go. This will only make it worse. Again, I just don't think the state should be the one that decides that. I don't trust the state. The Department of Environmental Protection is an agency that we'll talk about this in a minute, releases more conservation land to the developers. So, I just, again, let's let the local governing board with the influence of the public, because local commissioners are going to be more attuned to what their voters want and making decisions. So again, um, this is a bad bill that could cause really a lot of damage to our waters, our wetlands, and things. So this is another bad bill.
This next one is Senate Bill 938, the release of conservation easements.
Yeah, so we're going to keep going down this path. Again, SB 938 by Senator McLean, and this one on the House Bill 673 by Representative Dugan. So this is the statute that governs conservation easements. It would require water management districts to release conservation easements on a parcel if certain conditions are met. And so the conditions are that it's under 15 acres. That could be, and then could be released for development. And so a lot of these around these wetlands, you have land that's not, it's right next to a wetland, and many counties are trying to create buffers to protect these wetlands. And this would undo that. They would be able to take 15 acres or less, and it says it has to be bordered by impervious surfaces. And so what will happen with this? This is an incremental attack. So they'll do 15 acres now, and then they call it a daisy chain. And then then the next 15 acres now borders and could be released, and the next 15 acres can be released. And what you're going to have is that all these you'll start seeing incremental 15 acres here, 15 acres there, all around wetlands areas, and that will cause severe damage. Again, taking it away from local governments, their ability. It's the same theme, right? I keep repeating myself. It's why is people in Tallahassee telling people in other counties, how they can do things. So, this is another bad one that's all on the same theme of taking away local control and shutting the public up. And they're just going to do it increment. This one is a little sneakier because they go, oh, look, 15 acres, come on, what's the big deal? But there again, it will allow small parcels, and will get chipped away at and do damage. So so again, bad.
So I just moved to the slide about what you can do.
Okay, so yeah, we already covered those bills. Yeah. Um so at this point, and I was telling Lee earlier, I said there's so many bills. In fact, there's some more bills that we could talk about. We just, we don't have the time. Maybe if we have a few minutes, there's a couple others we could hit. But I told Lee, I said we may have to do this as part one and do another one fairly soon as part two, because there are some other bills that, that are bad too as well. Do the same thing. Take away local control over growth management, shut the public up, quicken the process of development. So, what I told Lee, I said, look, to write an alert for every bill, and there's probably 25 bills, and they go through, usually about 3 committees, right? The Senate, on the Senate side, and then on the House side, and they'll go through 3 committees. And literally, I would have to send you all an alert every day, and and have you spend more time than you have, trying to just spend every day doing these emails, right? So I feel at this point we need to go directly to the source of our district senator and our district representative. And I was telling Lee earlier, I said, in my 20 some years of working in Tallahassee, I've talked to many legislators, and they say constituent contact is what gets their attention the most. And so they said, these hundreds of emails from other people around the state that hit them, they go, it just doesn't have the impact. They're really more concerned about what their constituents think, because they're more concerned about the next election. So what I'm recommending, what we can do now, is to contact your district representative and your district senator. And we put together a sample email that you could also print it out as a letter and go to your district office. Legislator will probably be in Tallahassee right now, but you can still go to your district office and talk to the legislative aide in your district and hand them this letter. And so, as you can see, I wrote out, basically, dear whoever your district legislator is, as a constituent, because you want to make sure they understand when they first look at this that you're a constituent. And I, or if you have a group, you might say we, oppose any bill that violates these principles. And, I put in the principles that I outlined at the beginning of this town hall. And so, and then, therefore, we strongly urge you to vote no on the following bills. And so after that, what's the next? Yeah. So then, and then we put in the bills. So here's the bills, 2 sentences, why you opposed it. And then at the end, you'll go, I, or your group, we will consider your votes on these bills in the next election. Some say that's a threat. No, that's just what voters should do, right? Voters should look at how their district representative and district senator have voted on bills. And so to say like, yeah, I'm going to consider your votes on these bills, when I go to the ballot box. So, so that's, I don't see that as threatening. This is what voters should be doing, and you need to let them know that you will be doing that. And to that point, defending rural Florida, we're going to put out a scorecard after the session's over, and we're going to put all these bills and some of the others we'll cover later, and we're going to see how they voted on each bill. And you'll be able to get the scorecard, look at how they voted on these bills, and then you can make a decision. Is this candidate, is this senator or representative worthy of voting for, or is he definitely in the bag for developers? So looking forward to getting that out, because I got a feeling there's going to be a lot of F's on the scorecard. And then obviously sign your name and also include your address, again, just showing that you're a district constituent. So I think I hope everybody does this, because and I would get as many people in your area to do the same. So if you can go out using this sample template and get others to do it, again, we don't need hundreds or thousands of people to do this in a district. You only need, if you had 50 people do this, believe me, I've learned it gets their attention. That is probably the most effective thing I think we need to do right now.
Thank you so much, John. So I asked John just to go through the high level bills that are the most pressing and kind of the most terrifying. As John mentioned, we should do a follow-up of a second legislative overview, because there's so many more to cover. I mean, there's deregulations of the phosphate mining industry, which seem to happen
Right.
every single year. There's a lot more underway. But I dropped in the chat for those that are in the Zoom the list of legislators that you can directly email. And I'm also going to be emailing out this spreadsheet along with the copy and paste version of the email template to everybody who registered and everybody who's on our newsletter list. If you're not on our newsletter, you can go to savesplitoak.org, and right on the homepage, you'll see a button that says newsletter. Go ahead and sign in. And we'll be emailing this video out tomorrow and probably Monday. And we can keep the recap in our newsletter for a few circles. John and I will we'll schedule a follow through for a second round. But I want to start taking questions. And just before I do that, just kind of talk to you, John, about what's going on. Like, this is literally a land grab legislative session. I see it as this is the moment where I think they, as in the legislators, feel that they have no guardrails in this moment. And if that's the case, they're feeling very emboldened to pass these egregious kind of PR nightmare bills that could kill a campaign, but they must be feeling like they have permission to do this. And I don't know if it's just because there's so much going on that um, it just feels like they can get away scot free and people are going to forget, or if it's a little bit more along the lines of, um, they're just hearing campaign contributions, or maybe they're getting some other kickbacks from some of these major developers that are saying, "Hey, I can make this very lucrative for you." What do you think? Why do you think right now is the moment that these things are moving so terribly? Because there was a lot of pushback last year with the golf courses and natural lands and some of the other bad,
One
bad. Yeah, there was some bad developments coming that we came together as a
Mhm.
coalition for them to turn around the next year. And I mean, Senate Bill 1118, they got so much public pushback. For them to feel confident to move these bills this year, I something else is happening.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this earlier. So the developers are seeing and hearing the public. There is so much outrage. I've been happy in a way that I have found out since I've started this, defending rural Florida, that I wasn't the only guy. I wasn't the only one that was upset, and so there is, I'd say, millions of people in Florida are upset, and
Mhm.
the developers are seeing that. And these people now are all of you. I mean, you're showing up, and it's great. You're showing up at public hearings and defeating these development projects, and winning. So the developers are in a panic. Um, and what they fear is that the election in November could unseat some people. And it should. Uh, and so what they're saying is, like, we need to get these passed now. That's why there's so many bills, is because we got to get this passed now. And yes, they have influence over legislative leadership. Uh, One thing I like to do is go through political committees. So each legislator, especially the Senate president and Speaker of the House, and most all of them have a political committee. And the thing with a political committee is, like with a campaign account, you can only give $1,000 to a state representative or state senator to their campaign account. And I think the state for governor and the cabinet is 3,000 is the most you can give. So they have these political committees that can take unlimited amounts of money, right? Millions if a developer wanted. And so when I go through all these, and there's so many political committees, it's crazy. And you start connecting the dots. And you can see that all these developer dollars are coming in, and they're getting funneled over to legislative leadership. And I can't help, some people are saying, "What are you saying?" And I said, "Look, you know, if the legislative leadership is getting a pile of money, uh, you know, the developers didn't do it because they just really care, about, some issues, and that this is the guy for or woman for me to, fight for freedom and liberty and, whatever. Um, they want something back, and so it can't, when you're getting millions of dollars, you can't help it. I mean, you're human, so you're probably going to cater to the person that's funding your campaign. And this is a problem with county commissioners too, as well. Many county commissioners throughout Florida were rubber stamping developments, and developers were funding their campaigns. And again, the public. This is all about shutting up the public. This is what this is all about, because they were getting county commissioners to do their bidding and signing off on all these developments. And then all of a sudden, the public woke up and said, "Hell no." And that's why all these bills where they're saying we're taking away home rule, or, no local governing board can do anything. It's about shutting the public up. That's what this is about. So that's why it's happening.
So there are some questions in the chat. One question that stands out to me is about local charter counties and whether or not our charter has any strength in court, because I understand the preemption legislation is coming down pretty hard, but if we are able to amend our charter, I'm pretty sure there's like legal precedent to that supersedes the charter over some of these preemptions. But maybe you can clarify whether or not the charter has any legal strength.
Yeah, so this is a really good subject. I kind of looked into this a few years ago on the powers of the charter counties, because that's where the home rule amendment in the Florida Constitution gives the home rule powers to all municipalities, and then only counties that are chartered. There's only 21 chartered counties in Florida, so that means there's uh 40 46 counties that don't have a charter, aren't chartered. And so the question, I mean, I've researched past court cases on this, on the home rule, where the chartered counties were challenging the state on decisions coming down, and the decisions from the Supreme Court, or well, eventually the Supreme Court, but many court decisions were kind of mixed. Because there is something that says, well, home rule says you have some autonomy, but you can't do anything that conflicts with state statute. So a state statute superior, uh, supreme over anything in local. So this is, it's been fought in the courts. And so the state's claiming that if we write a law, you can't conflict with it. You can do what you want, but you can't conflict with state law. And so I don't have, like I said, I've just seen so many different rulings on this that really uh, leaves it open to whether, I certainly think it is what it is. Home rule means home rule. So it should be respected. And especially on growth management. I mean, it's again, what does a legislator in Tallahassee know about the problems of Orlando, right? I mean, people on the ground, county commissioners hearing from the public, have a better grasp of how their community should go forward. And so that absolutely the state should stay the hell out of it. So especially on growth management, that absolutely should stay local.
Um, One thing I definitely want to mention outside of the fact that we're going to have these email templates and these lists of legislators to be contacting and bothering, because it's an election year, there's going to be a lot of seats up, both on the local level and the state level. So I really recommend for those of you that might have a little bit more time to do research over your legislators in your area and see if you can get involved with a campaign. Again, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. If, I'm a Democrat, but if there's a Republican that says I'm not taking developer money and I'm going to defend the rural boundary and the Florida wildlife corridor, against an establishment Democrat that takes money from Lennar Homes and Pulte and Tavistock and all these mega developers that think Florida is their playground, I would definitely vote for that Republican over that Democrat, because I, as an activist trying to defend Split Oak Forest, have fought against Democrats just as much as I've fought against Republicans for trying to take some of the most sensitive land and basically give our tax-funded land to a developer, basically subsidizing their profit margins when we've been footing the bill to maintain that land for 30 years. But then when you go back and you check the campaign contributions, it's very similar. Both Democrats and Republicans are getting the same money from the same players. So, I think sometimes partisanship causes us to go a little blind, and that might be part of the reason why we've had a Republican controlled legislature for over 30 years, despite knowing that the Republicans in my life hate what's going on. But because of other, social issues, sometimes we get divided. And what we need to understand is that a land use bill like this is also an economic bill. Approving a 52,000 acre development in one vote could be the nail in the coffin for our tax base here. We're here in Orange County, I feel like the Blue Ribbons Project, for example, is a direct correlation to the Deseret Ranch
Oh,
Tavistock
absolutely.
property
Yep.
right in the middle of the wildlife corridor, where we don't
Mhm.
have water in our aquifer, where we know that critical species need as a passage to get from the north to south air part of our wildlife Florida corridor. And we see the Central Florida Expressway Authority's master plan that's putting like 6 toll roads in the middle of literally nowhere to prepare for this development to come in. And the city of Orlando already tried to annex it, and our local coalition fought back and beat that back. And guess what? Now they went up and complained to the state legislature and handed them language to move. And I have a feeling that Democrats and Republicans are going to vote for this because they're getting the same money. And so what we have to do is be diligent and say enough is enough. We're willing to vote across party lines. We're willing to get you out. We're willing to vote for champions who are going to defend our quality of life. And Orange County is already at a $64 million deficit in our infrastructure. We cannot afford to pay for the roads we already have, let alone the roads we're going to have to pay for when this massive development comes in, and we're capped at how much impact fees we can pay. So we can't charge the developer the long-term maintenance cost of the future roads that we're going to have to put in to
Right.
connect their development because we're preempted at the state from being able to charge them more. So guess who's going to pay so that Tavistock and all the other developers out there can make millions of dollars in profit and not deal with our flooding, not deal with our bad quality of air, not deal with our high cancer rates and 90% of our impaired water bodies and our low flow in our springs. They are all, in different countries getting to make profits. The heads of some of these development firms don't even live in Florida, so they're not going to have to deal with the frontline issues that we, the residents, are going to have to deal with. And the people that we have to target are the legislators who are writing, filing, and voting on these bills and make them feel the heat.
I would add, Lee, that to echo your points exactly. I would say that as far as who do we, partisan voting is like, I this is an existential crisis. We're at a crisis point, and unfortunately, maybe some people don't know, and legislators try to ignore it. But we're in serious trouble. Florida, as we know it, it'll be ruined, and the quality of life will diminish, and the cost of living here. You're going to have people moving. I mean, people are going to start leaving if this continues, and so Florida will not look the same in the next few years, 10 years, maybe even 20 years from now. It won't even you won't be able to recognize it. So it's and to your point, Lee, I am now a single issue voter. There's only one thing I'm taking in consideration is the candidate. I don't care what party they're in. I'm going to try to find candidates that are willing, have shown that either as an incumbent or they are, if they're new, if they're running for the first time, that they are absolutely 100% committed. I mean, 100% committed. Not that they kind of, they go down their website and maybe there's a squib at the bottom that says, yeah, we need to, have more responsible growth. No, I want to hear it at the top. Stop, and those are the candidates that I'm going to support and follow and vote for.
Well, we have a couple questions. Someone just dropped in the chat about the constitutional argument regarding citizen participation and unabridged rights. Don't know if these preemptions, I guess some of the points with the charter and this question is that, are these bills even constitutional?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, there's the cities and counties did a class action lawsuit against SB 180, right? They filed a lawsuit. And a Thousand Friends of Florida also filed a lawsuit saying that SB 180 was unconstitutional. And so the problem with that is it's going to drag through the courts for years. There will be no quick response on that, and the damage will get done unless Nick DeSegli comes to his senses and fixes his bill so it is a fix. Then the damage will be done before this ever gets to the court. And so, hoping that the lawsuits will fix it. And it may, 5 years from now, they may finally, come to a court decision and say, oh, that was unconstitutional, but the damage is done. So that's why again, we're just going to have to stand up and speak out. And so many of you are, I appreciate it. We got to, go to our county commission meetings, and we got to contact our legislators and just keep up the noise, be loud. Don't give in. The developers are hoping you'll get frustrated and quit. And I've seen this in my 20 some year career, is that if you don't quit, um, you eventually will wear them down. We'll wear them down. Don't give up.
Yeah, and support some of these organizations like Defending Rural Florida, like Sierra Club, like the Florida Springs Council, and Thousand Friends of Florida, who are going up to Tallahassee and putting it in the faces of the legislators. Because the calls definitely work, the emails definitely work, but having a physical person go up during these committees and speaking directly to these legislators really helps. I mean, some of them, like Clio Institute, they bring busloads of people up to talk about some of these bad bills. And, I really want to stress that as a climate activist, I'm grateful that we're starting to build a real coalition of people of every political background. We're starting to see our springs, and our coral reefs get the impact of climate change, and they're seeing the writing on the wall. Like, to me, these bills mean that Miami is going to be underwater soon, and they're trying to build very quick, deregulated, massive developments to be able to profit off of the huge migration of people from the south of Florida that can no longer sustain living on the coast inland because they don't want to leave Florida, and have us distracted on, undocumented migrants, so that we are all fighting each other over migrants' rights in that regard, saying that migrants are taking our, homes and taking our jobs, when in fact, what they're preparing for, and when I say they, it's the super PACs and the entities that are writing this legislation and handing it to the legislators, is they see the money coming in. They see the wealthy people that aren't going to want to deal with these king tides, that are going to want to go somewhere, but they're not going to want to travel out of state because maybe they love Florida or work in Florida. So they're going to pay for a $600,000 home in the middle of the wildlife corridor and pay the tax, aka the tolls. I call it a tax. CFX calls it a utility, to get to work every day, um, indefinitely, and pay tolls for the rest of their lives, living in the middle of nowhere where they don't I have to be away from their families in a car going to work for over an hour because the traffic's going to be egregious. This is what these developers want. And we, the people who have lived in Florida our whole lives, are going to have to watch our endemic species disappear that are found nowhere else in the world. We're going to have to see, I can't even go to the springs anymore because the way they looked when I was a child to the way that they look now kills me inside. I can't not cry. And then to see the last of our, longleaf pines disappear, these things are all connected. Not to mention that our cost of wastewater management is going up, our utility rates are going up, our costs of flooding insurance and property insurance is going up. These are all connected. And these legislators are getting a big paycheck and turning around to their vacation homes. And they have a backup plan in case things hit the fan, in case a hurricane like Dorian that almost went down the spine of Florida, category 5 hurricane, could have paralyzed us. And within 30 days, we could have been out of food. And if we keep killing our local agriculture and disincentivizing farming, that's a huge security risk for us. We're not going to have local food. And if we depend on imports and our infrastructure in a peninsula is leveled from a hurricane, then these legislators aren't going to be worried about whether or not you can feed your family at that point. So this is why, I'm urging people to email and contact your legislators.
So many of these developers, as you know, don't even live in Florida. They don't care. They don't even have to live here. They live somewhere else. They live, somewhere else in the country. And so, yeah, they could care less, they know the damage. They know the damage they're doing, and they don't care because they see money. And so they don't care that they destroy Florida. And it's a sad situation, right?
Yeah. The only hope that we have is that the legislators right now are kind of barking at each other and fighting. And so I think that's a little bit of a good thing because they're spiteful and maybe some of these bills won't be able to make it. But then again, the developers get a seat at the table, regardless. So we have to make sure that we force ourselves at the table. So with that, I'd like to close down the call. We hit our hour. And we are going to plan a part two of this and send out all of these communication tools first thing in the morning. So go to savesplitoak.org if you'd like to be on the email list. I'll make sure to put, John, if that's okay, your email in case you
Yes.
have more
Yeah.
questions. And John, if you can just plug, are there any ways that people can support defending rural Florida and your work?
Well, I mean, on our website, defendingruralflorida.org, yeah, if anybody wants to help out, we have a donation page. So, we're, we're trying to stay in the fight. So, we put any money that comes in towards the fight, so that always appreciated to enable us to do things that we couldn't do without any money. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll be sure to add your donation page to the email blast as well so that folks can support you. John goes up to Tallahassee and has conversations with legislators and tries to change their hearts. So thank you. And I
tough.
appreciate you. Have a great
Thanks.
night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.